Today I want to talk about the ACE test. The ACE test is the Adverse Childhood Experiences test. And what it does is it can identify traumas that might correlate to future problems down the road. Or what it actually does is it can correlate to problems that you may be having now. And what it can also do is it can inform treatment now, or if you wanted to take a look at this down the road as well. So I want to tell you a little bit about the test first, and then I'm actually going to take the test, because as I was going over this, and it's not just today, I've been working with this in alcohol and drug rehab centers. This is a pretty rough test because you really have to look into your past, and you're going to have to be honest with yourself. And so what I'm going to do today, I'm going to try to at least model how to be honest with yourself. So I'm going to say some things today. And I think this is a good time to do it because my parents are both dead. I don't think I would make a video like this if both of my parents were alive. So that'll give you a clue as to how deep it's necessary to get in order to get to the root causes of the issues. Especially if you really want to be honest and you've had a difficult childhood. It's extremely difficult to be honest with people who are in your family who are probably going to end up denying your reality anyway. Or you'll end up hurting them, or you're going to end up being punished in some way, shape, or form. So there's no possibility right now of me being punished for this. The only thing I could think it could do is to help some people and to model how honest you need to be while you take this test. So this test, if you can believe it, the origins of it started back in about 1995. And it was at an obesity clinic. And what they were noticing is that there were a lot of people who were able to lose weight, even up to 100 pounds or so. And when that happened, though, most of them ended up reversing, and they ended up gaining their weight back. And they were wondering, well, this is not a calories in, calories out situation. This must be a psychological problem. So then they found out that people who had even lost 100 pounds and then gained it all back, it was the psychological adversity of having sexual trauma in their life. And they were afraid to look attractive to other people. So that's why they ended up gaining weight. So then they thought, okay, let's start really using this and figuring out how many other traumas are holding people back. So the ACE test, it's a 10-question test. And what it really does is it looks at physical, emotional, sexual abuse. It looks at physical, emotional neglect. It looks at household, the household that you grew up in, your family of origin. Was there divorce? Was there drugs? Maybe some violence or some type of mental illness? Now, as good as this test is, it doesn't even really scratch the surface of how many traumas a person could have. It doesn't include poverty, community violence, bullying, anything like that. So this is, like I said, as good as it is, it's still skimming the surface. There's a lot more, and we can get that. I can do that in other shows, but for today, ACE test. Now, as we're counting down, the number you're kind of looking here is for the number 4. Once you hit 4 ACEs on this ACE test, which 12% of the people actually have that, this is where it really shows that people are at risk. So 4 ACEs, it correlates to 400 to 1200% chance of alcoholism, drug abuse, anxiety, depression, and suicide attempts. And a little bit less than that, 200 to 400% chance of smoking, obesity, and if you can believe this, having 50 or more sexual partners. It also correlates to sexual transmitted diseases, respiratory disease, and heart disease. So you might ask yourself, well, how can that even correlate? Just the stress alone can cause respiratory problems. I myself, I have asthma. I was taught at a very young age. It's very much an emotional problem that could trigger an asthma attack. What would trigger an asthma attack for me? I always had my asthma attacks on Sunday night. Why would that be? Well, because I was at my father's house on Sundays, and he would have his girlfriend there, and then they would have to make the connection to where my father would have to bring me back home. And in that connection of seeing my father with another woman, and then him dropping me back off at home, but my father driving away, made me have an asthma attack almost every single week for a very long time. So that should give you an example. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this test for you. So again, keep in mind the number is 4 as being a person who's at risk. So the first question is, did a parent or other adult in the household often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you? Or did they act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? I'm going to answer this, but I want to answer it on the second question if I can. So I want to combine these. So right now, I'm not going to say that I have an ace here. We're going to leave that blank. So right now, my answer is 0. Question number 2. Did a parent or other adult in the household often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you? Did they ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? Let me start with this. When I was very young, my father would put me in positions on purpose and physically dominate me in ways to force me to cry, because I had a couple of friends at that time. I was about 5, 6 years old. We did have a house then. My friends that were next door neighbors were Matthew and Michael. He knew that they were going to come over at a certain time. He would try to make me on purpose answer the door while I was crying so I could be a baby in front of other boys. And so whatever it took to get me to cry, he would do that. So we can fill in the blanks there. So, and it didn't take much, right? Like you get a knock on the door, oh, it's Michael at the door. Okay, well, you're allowed to go and play, but I'm going to make you cry first. And the game is to see how little I can feel, how much punishment I could take without crying. So that's one. At a time, my sister, let's say, her birthday's in March, so April, May, June. My sister's 15 months younger than me. There was a time when she was wearing diapers. This is how young we were. And I was out of diapers. Not wearing diapers, I should say. And my father would try to put diapers on me to prove how much of a baby I was. And I would have to fight. You know, and it would be like with the safety pins sticking in and stuff like this. And it would be, how much could you possibly fight? And if I make you cry, now you're definitely going to wear the diapers. So again, physical abuse, absolutely. When he thought he would get in trouble, when I got a little bit older for doing such a thing, he thought he'd get a little smart. So I already was beating kids up in school to impress him, to show how tough I was. So he was like, well, you're not that tough. So I think I was about 8 years old. And his new wife, we were at her house, and I had a stepsister who was older than me. What he did was he paid one of the local kids, who was about 14 years old at the time, to come to the house to have a fight with me. So again, I'm 8 or 9 years old, having a fight with a 14-year-old. And I did okay, but I did not win that fight. Yeah, and so, okay, so that's physical abuse by proxy, right? So he's actually literally paying a kid in the community to come into the house to beat me up. And you might, you know, I kept thinking about this, and this is why I want to answer the first one now. It wasn't losing the fight or being hit that hurt me that much. It was me in the living room looking at my father eating a sandwich with the kid who just beat me up and congratulating him on making me understand that there's better people in the world than me. and stronger people in the world than me. So it's not just the physical abuse. I'm going back to the first question. Did anybody humiliate you? I'm saying that the physical abuse that I went through was not to just physically hurt me. It was to humiliate me. That was the exact purpose. It wasn't just because he was angry and swung. It was a premeditated effort to humiliate and make me look stupid and small and inconsequential. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to answer the first one. The answer is yes. So I'm going to put a check mark there and another check mark for the other one. There was a time when I knew he was going to come after me. And I knew it because he always did. So in the backyard, there was a small gap between the house and the fence. So I built little trenches, holes in the ground back there. And what I did was I took the newspaper and I put it over the top. And I put dirt over the top. And then I put little rocks where I knew the papers were, which is really where the holes were. And the next time, as planned, I knew that he was going to come after me. So I ran out the front door of the house, ran around to the backyard, and yes, he chased me. I knew he would. And I knew where the rocks were so I could jump over where the holes were. And he, of course, landed directly. He landed in the first hole I had made. And I don't know, I wanted him to break his ankle. I was trying to kill him. At that age, I thought it would kill him. So that's honestly what I was trying to do. But I didn't kill him. I hurt his ankle really bad, and then he got up and went to the next one. The next one he missed, and then the next one, boom, went right into the hole again. And then he realized what I did, that I was specifically doing this in order to go after him. And it didn't end up good for me after that, but it certainly was good to get back at him, which is probably something I shouldn't say, but anyway, I said it and that's true. Okay, so question number 3. Did an adult person at least 5 years older than you ever touch or fondle you or touch your body in a sexual way? Or did they try to actually have oral, anal, or vaginal sex with you? Well, here's something else that I never told my mother because, again, we didn't have a lot of money, so we were at this recreation center. And again, it was about maybe 9 years old. No, actually it was a little older, probably about 10. And this one guy, he noticed that I was working out in the gym, trying to do push-ups and sit-ups and stuff. And he came by and he says, you know, are you into wrestling? I said, yeah, I want to be a wrestler when I'm in school, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, I'm a wrestling coach. And he said, yeah, I could show you something. Let's go in the locker room. And there was nobody there at the time. Now, I didn't get this, but, you know, so he throws me down. I'm like, you know, already I knew that there was a situation. Now, if anybody watches UFC, you do a lot of fighting from your back, you know, jiu-jitsu. But in, I guess you would call collegiate wrestling, you don't do that. You're trying to stay off your back. So I thought I did a good job by turning over onto my stomach on the ground. I didn't know anything about that, but not to get graphic, but that's kind of the position he actually wanted me to be in. He wanted me to be face down. Nothing like penetration happened, but certainly something that I did not understand at the time that he was trying to do or whatever. I didn't get it. I knew it was wrong. That I can tell you. And when I got out of the locker room, no, I never told my mom a thing because my mom was so happy to be able to get us to this recreation center so we could actually have some fun and be like normal kids, that I never thought to hurt my mom. So no, I never told her, and she never needs to know, and she's not here anymore, so in a way that's good. She doesn't need to hear this. So my answer to that, again, I've got 3 out of 3 on the ACEs so far. Number 4. Did you often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special? Or your family did not look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? Well, here I could say Listen, my mother always loved me, you know, so that was never an issue. And believe it or not, even though my parents were divorced when I was very young, my father was always, he only lived one town away. So he was always around the family, and although there was some problems when I was younger, my father did support the situation. So I would have to say that's not an ace for me. So no score for me on that one. Number 5. Did you often feel that you did not have enough to eat, you had to wear dirty clothes, and there was no one there to protect you? Or were your parents too drunk or high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you needed it? Well, this is an interesting one. Number 1, my parents never drank, they never did drugs, so let's just say that. On the other hand, of having enough to eat, wearing dirty clothes, and no one to protect you, let's say my parents did the best they could, but I've been there when we were evicted from an apartment. They lived paycheck to paycheck. I did have to watch what I ate because I didn't want to eat too much because it couldn't be replaced until a certain time later. My parents, especially my mother, wanted to protect me, but the thought that she really could was in doubt as far as I was concerned. So let me say for sure that no, I never felt protected, I never felt safe, and food was an issue, money was an issue, all of that was an issue. On top of that, 99 or 95% of the friends that I had in the town that I lived at, they lived in 2-story houses with a garage, with a basement, with swimming pools, with 2 cars, one of them, you know, it being a really nice car, maybe even 2. I had friends that lived right on the bay. Their backyard was water with a cabana and boats, you know, so it was an odd juxtaposition, if you want to say that, of I was right around everybody that was taken care of and had money, but I had none. I've been talking to some of my friends lately on Zoom, and it's interesting to listen to them because they'll talk about, like, you know, going to this particular place. And it's like, well, yeah, it was so fun for everybody, and it was. Everybody would get something to eat. But I would sit there and not eat because I had no money. So again, to make a long story short, I get an ace on that one too, because there were many times, if not all the time, that I felt that food was a difficult thing, clothing and shelter was all difficult. Number 6, were your parents ever separated or divorced? That's an easy one. Yes, divorced. I think I was 5 or 6, so I get an ace on that one. Was your mother or stepmother often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her? Was she ever repeatedly hit over at least a few minutes or threatened with a gun or knife? Okay, what I saw most of the time was verbal abuse from my father. I don't really think he ever said something nice about my mom. That's one. He used to call her fat all the time. I remember that, and he wouldn't want to walk near her. If he could avoid it, he would. Affection? Nah. That I don't even know what that word means. I do now. I didn't know what it meant then. And to be more specific to the actual question, I'll just name once because I'm making this video too long as I'm really thinking about it. But yeah, I mean, I've walked in when I was very young with my father beating up my mother, and I remember very clearly thinking I need to get up to where his height was because I was a little kid. I was very small. I was about 5. So what I did was I ran and I jumped on the bed to get some height, and I jumped and I landed and I tried to punch him right in the back of the head, and I grabbed him around the neck, and that's what I did. And I held on. I know my feet weren't touching the floor, that I can tell you. And as I was choking him, it did enough for him to realize that I had got a kid on my back, and he stopped. And then once I don't know how I ended up on the ground, but I got up and I stayed right in the middle of both my parents so they wouldn't fight anymore. So, and is that the only time I've ever seen a fight? No. So again, I'm going to give myself an ace on that one. Number 8, did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or an alcoholic or who used street drugs? No, my parents never drank or did drugs. Number 9, was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? And the answer to that one is no. When I was a kid, no, I never noticed any of that. So again, no problem there. Number 10, did a household member go to prison? Yeah, my father was in prison. Honestly, I was kind of on that child amnesia stage. I was very, very young. I don't remember it. I was told that my sister was allowed to go to the prison to visit my dad because they thought she was too young and she would never remember it. And they thought I was old enough that I would remember it. Oddly enough, my sister does remember it and I don't remember a thing. But I'm, looking at it from a mental health clinician, there has to be a certain amount of damage that's done to a very young child whose father is not there during a very critical time in the child development stage, and they're not there for at least a year. But I have absolutely not one memory of it at all. I can't talk about it, I don't know. But according to this test, I am allowed to give myself an ace for it. All right, so final score. Let's add this up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I have 7 out of 10 aces. Now, once again, going back to the original test, you are an at-risk person if you have 4. And at 4 aces, it's all the things I already told you that I went over at the beginning. You've got like a 1,200% chance for depression, anxiety, suicide ideations, and all this. It sounds negative, but here's the good part, and this is why I'm doing this, is because there's another part to the ACE test which is even more important than the adverse childhood experiences. And it's called the resilience test. But I'm not going to take that one today. I'm going to take that one next time for you. And I'm going to show you how you can rise above each and every one of these problems here. And actually, I am very happy for my experiences. They made me the person that I am today, and it makes me a really good trainer, and it makes me a really good therapist because I have been through it. So I don't want to give you too much detail because the resilience test is really important, and I want to track through it to show you how you can use it to rise above. But for today, anyway, I hope you take the test. You can Google it, you can look it up, just put in adverse childhood experiences test. And again, it's only 10 questions, but really get down deep and don't lie to yourself. Thanks for listening, and I will do the resilience test next time. Thank you.